The flow state is not something you enter. That's the biggest fallacy. The flow is always happening. We just can't be here right now. And that's the biggest problem, is people don't have the ability to be here right now and figure out what are the blocks of the flow? What are the kinks in the chain? What are the kinks in the hose? Best mantra is, it's not necessary to react. So when something happens, I have to have the ability. The most powerful move you could ever learn is the ability to say time out and pause, stop world, stop the time, take a breath in, take a step back, and take a look at what's really happening without your emotions. Somebody cut you off in traffic and you reacted to them. You just gave away your energy. So it's not just about what do we do to build the energy. We have to also look in our life, in our patterns, where do we drain the energy in our actions throughout the day? And then the other part happens is that the biggest drain of your life force is when you're not who you truly are.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Budo Brothers podcast. We have a very special guest, none other than our good friend, our teacher and mentor, Sifu Singh. Sifu, welcome to the show.
What's good, boys? How you guys doing? Long time, man.
It has been a long time. It's been a really long time, you know, with all of this craziness and the tough travels and stuff. But finally, we got to get on a podcast and just catch up, I guess. So one thing for anybody who may have just tuned into the Budo Brothers network or community or just started listening to the podcast, Sifu Singh is one of the most influential people in our martial arts journey that we've encountered to date. There's a couple of them, but we found him and he opened up a whole new world to the martial arts side beyond combat and fighting, and more of a spiritual journey and meditation and qigong, and he's really helped us even evolve as men. So we're so blessed to have him on the podcast here today.
I'm blessed to know you guys, man. You guys are spreading joy and the martial spirit all across the world. Everything you guys do, it comes from that place of lifting the martial spirit up, and through the martial arts, you know, at the end of the day, they're a vehicle to lift everyone's spirit up. You know, most people, we get into martial arts because of insecurity or fear or anger. You know, maybe you watch something on TV that inspires you, but I think that the martial arts is truly one of the greatest vehicles to express and find your true human potential. And you guys are doing a wonderful job as ambassadors, you know, bringing it to more eyes, more ears through all your seminars and products and things that you do.
Thank you. There's never in our lives have we felt more on purpose. And it's funny when you start resonating there, people come in, when the students are ready, the teacher arrives. And that's just kind of been our journey as we've been organically going on this path.
Yeah. And it is crazy to think that when you put yourself out there, the things that you attract, because we would have never found each other if we both weren't authentically doing what we were supposed to do. And like our journeys crossed, and you know, we'll most likely be friends until we're in the ground. So like we can never stress enough to people, like, put yourself out there in order to see what comes back, what reciprocates, because the best types of relationships are formed that way.
No, 100%, man. 100%. There's always like a feeling. There's an energy, there's an intuition, there's something greater than you thinking about things when you just know things are right. And this is, you know, that's why they call it the vibe, but it's really truly a vibration, you know? And when you have that similar vibration in many different people, you can see it, especially good friends that you get to meet. There's an instant connection, you know? And I think this martial artist, that's something really cool. Like, for example, you know, we've been to like Super Show, or you go to other places where there's a lot of martial artists who come in. There's an instant connection if people are willing to allow that connection to happen, if they can remove the veil of competition and they can remove the veil of, like, you know, judgment and complaining and criticizing and condemning. Under it, we're all searching for the same truth.
And I want to share a personal story. When I was trying to get full time into Budo Brothers, and really working on myself in order to do that, we started doing some coaching together, and you were instrumental in helping me to do that. So I was scared to take a jump. I was fighting it, and you gave me a framework that I still consistently do that allows me to strive for these things, to look fear in the face, to persevere through things. And I know a lot of our listeners right now are maybe going through a lot of anxious moments, or feeling a lot of stress or turmoil, or, you know, just coming off of the craziness of a chaotic world. What advice could you give a person similar to myself to, you know, get through these hard, anxious times that we're living in?
Well, first of all, thank you for those kind words, and Kyle, you did the work at the end of the day. You know what I mean? All I did was just pass on teachings that have been passed on to me. I can't take credit for it. But what it is really is, at the end of the day, when you talk about the path of truly finding who you are, it's not about trying to become somebody else. It's not about trying to build something new. And I think that's where sometimes causes the stress and anxiety for a lot of people. It's about removing the blocks that are in the way of who you already are. So, for example, people want to be happy. So they're looking at different things to make themselves happy. Maybe that happiness is in people, it's in places, it's in things. And they assume that happiness is a destination. They assume that happiness is going to happen at some point. They assume that happiness is going to happen if they achieve something. But at the end of the day, the truth of it is happiness. And this goes same for the flow state, is right here, right now, in this moment. And the journey is to figure out what is stopping you from being happy, not trying to do something to make you happy. So people talk, people come to me, the people I work with, whether it's in law enforcement and military government agencies or Silicon Valley or professional athletes or whoever I'm working with, including myself, the flow state is not something you enter. That's the biggest fallacy. The flow is always happening. We just can't be here right now. And that's the biggest problem, is people don't have the ability to be here right now and figure out what are the blocks of the flow? What are the kinks in the chain? What are the kinks in the hose? And that's something that ends up happening. And so people are always looking for something outside of themselves to make themselves happy, or some accomplishment, or, for example, in this moment that we're in, and people are feeling stress, people are feeling anxiety. This is the world we live in. That's the true reality. What the pandemic did was the pandemic exposed something that was already there, but just exposed it, brought it to people, because people weren't going to work maybe, and they were spending more time by themselves. So they didn't have opportunities to numb themselves or lose themselves in social structures, in their work, and in different things. So they had to be with themselves. And being with yourself can be in the beginning, being with yourself is very difficult, because it's very difficult to stop, because we're conditioned as a society where dysfunction has become a norm. And by dysfunction, what I mean is living a stressful life and a competitive life and always on the go life, a life where we're in this constant state of trying to acquire more things because we think in the acquisition of more things, it will make us happy. We're living in this. And so now that's become the norm. So dysfunction has become a norm. And at the end of the day, what's happened is that we've lost our relationship to our own center, to our own root. We've gotten so far away from who we truly are. There's no way you can be happy. There's no way you can not be stressed. And so when you talk about being stressed, and then the other part is being overwhelmed, being exhausted, being distracted, that requires energy. And of course, we can say, eat the right foods. That's going to help. Sleep at the right times. Of course, that's going to help. Do Qigong. That's going to help. Do meditation, do yoga, do whatever you're going to do. That's going to help. But that's just one piece. You still have to do the work to figure out what the blocks are inside of you and where you're wasting your potential life force. The biggest waste of potential life force is when you're truly not being yourself. Because if you're truly not yourself, then the masks you have to wear, the acquired personalities you acquired from your experiences, from your friends, from your teachers, from your traumas, all those things you collected for survival require energy to feed it. So if we want to talk about creation, we want to talk about adaptability, we want to talk about connection, we want to talk about flow, we want to talk about happiness, half of our life force is going into being this person that we're not. And then we get so lost in this loop. You know, we call it the saboteur. You guys have trained with me. We give it a name. It's the saboteur. There's these thoughts in your head that just keep running. They keep looping. These fears that we have, they're not real. We learned these fears. The only real thing should be a fear right now, possibly, is that if we're sitting here, guys, and a tiger just jumps out and chokes us, or I mean, you can see I do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, chokes you.
actually, on a side note, a tiger does choke you because when he grabs your neck, that's how he actually kills you. So that's true too. But other than a tiger jumping out, every fear we have is made up. It's not real. You know, General Sun Tzu, I love one of his quotes, and the quote is, "The art of war, respect all, fear none." We have to get to the point to live life fearlessly. And that doesn't mean live it without accountability or without being smart. I mean, we have to get down to what are our true fears? What are we really afraid of? Whose opinions are we really afraid of?
So if you believe that maybe this was all by design or there was some higher power that put this all together, what would be the purpose of having fear in humans? Like, yes, on a primal level, if there's a tiger, but it must protect us in another way or do something else for us, because it seems to be so prevalent in everybody's life. Like, everybody is literally just constantly being driven or propelled or negotiating with their fears.
That's a brilliant question. If there is no fear, and by the way, when I say be fearless, what I mean is fear less. Okay? Everybody experiences fear. I experience fear. Every single person experiences fear. If they don't experience fear, all right, they're a psychopath. There's something seriously wrong with them, okay? The key is, when you feel fear, what do you do to return to your center? How does the fear impact your actions? What is your relationship with fear? We all have to have a relationship with fear. Either fear kicks you into realizing something is important and you need to focus, or fear makes you freeze, or it makes you go into fight mode, or it makes you go into flight mode. Those are all reactions, or it makes you submit. But those aren't responses. When fear kicks in, the purpose of fear, first, from a perspective of the jungle and the environment, is for us to be alert, to be present, to be aware of what's happening around us. The second thing is, if there is no fear, you know, if you look at Tai Chi and the theory of opposites, if there's no fear, there can be no courage. Courage is a choice inside of fear. Courage is not the absence of fear. So to be courageous means you're scared and you still chose a response. You still chose to face the fear. So fear is your greatest friend. Fear is what allows you to evolve. Fear is what allows you to create. When we're talking back about when you were going through that situation, I was just pointing out to you that, hey, you got one life. We can take it being afraid, but that fear is not you either. You learned the fear from someone. Or the fear came because of some experiences you had in the past and you don't want them to happen again. So now you're trying to control the future because, let's say I had a traumatic experience in the past and now I'm afraid of it happening again. Maybe I started a business and the business didn't work. So now that fear from the past is coming into my new endeavor. Instead of looking back and be like, well, you know, that business of mine didn't work. Why did it not work? Now extract the wisdom from that. Cut the fear away, take the wisdom, now apply the wisdom and go forward. Because fear is my greatest teacher. It teaches me who I am. It teaches me what my reactions are. It teaches me the patterns that I've learned. And it gives me an opportunity to outgrow it and create something new. So fear is a brilliant evolutionary advantage if we understand it. At the same time, fear is the biggest debilitator if we allow it to consume us and we allow fear to be the master of our choices.
Does fear take you out of the flow state?
Yes, fear takes you out of the flow state, but it also puts you in it. So think of it this way. Fear, like anger, like war. Okay, you have 5 shadow emotions, yeah? So in Chinese medicine theory. So you have fear, you have anger, you have grief, you have worry, and you have like stress or anxiety, yeah? Or disorder. All of these emotions are a discharge of energy, but they're supposed to be a temporary discharge. It's how quickly do you understand that that's happening and you're afraid? And then what is your training that kicks in for you to take that energy and then use it somewhere else? Can you take the fear and then transform it into focus? And that's what the training comes down to. That's where if we don't do that, then it becomes a reaction from the fear, which is either you go into fight response, or you go into a flight response, or you freeze response, or you submit to what's happening. And those are reactions. And our biggest goal, as you guys know, and what I've learned always is the best mantra is it's not necessary to react. So when something happens, I have to have the ability, the most powerful move you could ever learn is the ability to say time out and pause, stop world, stop the time, take a breath in, take a step back, and take a look at what's really happening without your emotions. Can you detach yourself from your past? Can you detach yourself from what's going to happen and be right here, right now, in this moment, and observe what is actually happening? And then from there, we choose a tactical response. And this is a skill we all have to train. And this skill is going to be useful in a dangerous situation, but it's also going to be useful, hey man, when you're talking to your wife or your girlfriend or your significant other and they say something, how many times somebody says something and you just blurt some shit out? Right? And then you're like, oh man, I wish I didn't say that. That's a simple idea of a reaction. So we have to study our tendencies. We have to study our reactions. This is what knowing yourself really is. Knowing yourself is to study what are my tendencies? What are my preferences? What are the things I like to do? And what are the things I don't like to do? So if I understand all of that, then I know who I am and I can choose something outside of it. And if I choose something outside of it, or I may even choose one of those options, but I'm consciously choosing it instead of it being a reaction. So these things are important to understand. And when we talk about fear getting you out of the flow state, it kills it. It totally kills it. It can be used as a trigger because something is of value to you to click into it. And then the next thing happens is when we want to see how far you've come in your training or how far you've grown as an individual is the time factor of how quickly, when you feel an emotion like anger, can you transform it? How quickly when you feel an emotion like fear, can you transform it? How quickly when you feel something like worry, can you transform it? Or does that voice, the Jake, the saboteur, whatever you want to call it, take it and run with it, and now it makes you loop in your head. And then you start to pound because all those things are going to create tension. It creates tension in your body, it creates tension in your mind, it creates tension in your breath. So tension in the body, you start to stiff up. You start to stiff up, you can't breathe. You can't operate. So if you're an athlete or you're a martial artist, that tension is going to fight against you. It's not going to allow you to be fluid. Next, tension in the breath. You get that response, you hold your breath, then you go into hyperventilation. Holding your breath is hypoventilation. And both those things are no good either because they're going to create tension. They take you to the extremes. Tension in the mind. Tension always, if you remember this, tension rises. Tension rises. So tension rising in your mind means the thoughts speed up. It rises. Tension rises in your heart rate. The heart speeds up. Tension rises in your respiration. It speeds up. The opposite. And my whole thing has been one rule, the number one rule that I study and try to practice in everything is rule number one, relax. Because relaxation falls. Relaxation goes down. The skill is to be able to bring myself down and not go up and down with the ways of the world. So relaxation falls. And so whether you're doing martial arts, you're doing your breathing, you're doing your work, it's your awareness of your ability to find out when you are out of flow, to start breathing and bring yourself back into it. Because what gets you out of flow is three things. It's security, it's control, and it's approval. Right? So if you took it control, you trying to control things. We try to control things because we're still angry about something that happened in the past. And so we don't want that to happen again. So we try to control things. So you're like a control freak. Then there's people who are approval junkies. They need approval from people all the time. Or they need approval from something outside of themselves because there's a hole inside themselves and they don't have approval for themselves. It's a self-worth issue. And then security. You're afraid of something that's going to happen in the future. So all of these things, fear is the mother of all emotions, but it plays out this way. And those security, control, and approval are mechanisms that we've adopted because of some trauma that we faced that's not been processed, some betrayal, some rejection, some abandonment. And that plays over and over again until we really get to that and we start to work that out. If we don't understand that, forget talking about flow state. It's not going to happen because those are the things that block it. And the funny thing is, you may be thinking, if you're listening, he's talking about psychology and stuff like that. This is all in martial arts. This is all internal kung fu training. And when my teacher started teaching me, I was like, yo, man, I just want to learn how to, I just want to learn how to fight. I don't want to have to deal with my emotions. I don't want to have to deal with like why I want to fight. And he's like, why do you want to fight? I was like, what? He said, why are you so angry? I'm like, what? What do you mean? I'm not angry. I'm not angry. And that's, you have to truly take a look at the man in the mirror and find out, why did I become the way I am? It's not a bad thing. That's just the key thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just a journey thing. But the moment you realize it, that you adopted these things because that's how you survived. But to thrive, you got to look at that person and be like, hey, man, thanks for getting me this far. Because if you didn't, we wouldn't be here. I honor you. I respect you. And now let's look forward. How do we grow together and go together?
Nice. That's one beautiful thing about martial arts, and one thing that Budo Brothers really puts as forward on the things that we want to do. We want to use martial arts as a vehicle to help people reach their true potential. There's so much contained within the arts, doesn't matter which one, that help you not only learn to defend yourself, protect your life, your family, but also help with internal work and to deal with the outside world. Because, the odds of you getting into a conflict on the street and having to use your martial art are way less than you having to deal with voices or stories that you tell yourself in your head that continually beat you up. We were talking earlier before the podcast, though, we were talking about an energy crisis, which is kind of timely because if you look at the world right now and there's an energy crisis going on in Europe, and even too with just how we're trying to switch over to electric or gas, but energy is a constant theme no matter what level of life, right? On a cellular level, on a relationship level, on a spiritual level. It literally is about energy. Could you talk about the energy crisis that you were explaining to us earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. And so by energy, I'm talking about life force, chi, prana. Many different cultures have mana in Hawaii. It's your life force, and we are living in a society right now that's in a constant state of overwhelm, a constant state of exhaustion, and a constant state of distraction. So we need energy, and so we have to have a method first to build energy. Then we have to have a method to figure out where do we drain our energy. These are important things. And then we have to find out where are the holes in our energy? Where do we leak our energy? And so that becomes part of the training. So for example, like I said earlier, if you criticize, complain, and condemn, you're just wasting life force. You're wasting energy. So you have to see, okay, when am I wasting energy? So something you can try, it's the time of New Year's, New You resolutions and stuff like that. And it's see if you can catch yourself complaining, criticizing, and condemning. Because every time you do that, you're just draining your life force. Let's say you get up in the morning and you do a Qigong practice or a yoga practice or a breathwork practice, or whatever you choose. And then you leave your house, you're feeling good. And I don't know, your neighbor's dog shits on their lawn and you step in it and you get really angry and you lose it. You just lost all that energy you gained because you reacted. You see what I'm saying? Or somebody cut you off in traffic and you reacted to them. You just gave away your energy. So it's not just about what do we do to build the energy. We have to also look in our life, in our patterns, where do we drain the energy in our actions throughout the day? And then the other part happens is that the biggest drain of your life force is when you're not who you truly are. Because it takes energy to feed the masks of driven by our ego and our fears and stuff. That all requires life force. So from a perspective of that's the energy formula, and we need energy for awareness. Because how many times is it that if you think about, you're really tired, you're low in energy, you're rushing, and now your awareness is not there, and you don't see things happening. You don't see the things you might be saying, or you make mistakes at work, or you don't have the ability to make decisions. You feel really clouded. Then you get even more exhausted and more overwhelmed, and you take that into the next day. And that's the loop that most people are living in. And they think, and one of the things, not they, everyone, is that, oh, I'm going to get my energy back by, I don't know, numbing myself out. Okay. Or watching Netflix or eating some cookies or whatever I'm doing, like whatever the vice may be. Or I'm just taking a break. I'm going to relax. Because the thing about relaxation is what's relaxation? Relaxation is not having a long day of work and then coming and sitting down on the couch and binge watching Netflix. That's not relaxation, because you didn't gain any energy from that. You just numbed yourself out from what was happening that day. And then the next day you're going to have to go back, and that's good. That energy of the way you were feeling the day before is going to carry over to the next day. So if you take a look at it and you say, well, what is relaxation? It's kind of hard for a lot of people to understand what relaxation is, but I can tell you that we can all understand what tension. Relaxation, if I give you a working definition, is the ability to identify when you're tense, where you're tense, and what's causing you tension. And in that moment, the skill of releasing it. So we have to be able to find relaxation under pressure. We have to be able to find relaxation in chaos, not the absence of it. And that's one of the best gifts that I got from martial arts, is the ability to understand what true relaxation is. And true relaxation is not the absence of chaos. True relaxation is that when there's an external pressure, an external stress force being placed upon me, do I have the ability to be aware that that's happening? And then do I have the ability to start relaxing, releasing the tension? And when I do that, I save my energy. I can use that energy now to raise my awareness. Because if I don't have energy and I don't have awareness, they go down. My emotions come up, heart rate comes up, tension comes up, fear comes up, the yip yapping in my head comes up. And all of that stuff is going to lead me to a less than favorable outcome. If I can relax under pressure, that's the very first most important rule that there is in life. Can you relax? Can you relax your body by finding its alignment? Can you find the relaxation in your breath? Can you find the relaxation in your mind by entering the present moment, not being in the past or the future? And finding the center of the body, the center of the breath, the center of the mind. Can I find it? How do I find it? What's my method for practicing it? So we first start that in stillness. And then can I maintain that while I'm moving? And then can I maintain that while there's an external chaos or pressure being placed upon me, can I keep that state? And that's what martial arts teaches us, is how to go from stillness to movement to chaos, but keeping our center. Now, there's some people that in chaos, they're super relaxed and they're really good at what they do. There's certain people, a lot of the Silicon Valley executives, a lot of high-end operators, in chaos, they just click into this other place. But it's for them, the difficult thing is to be still without chaos. Right? You know, Eric, we've talked about it many times, how many CEOs, you know, and all the events we go and talk and speak at, that they bring that chaos home because chaos is normal for them. So they need the chaos. When the chaos is not there, they're checked out. They're sitting across from their kids, they're miles away, or they're creating problems, they're creating tension, they're creating stress. How many people we know that are like that? So it's not that stillness is more important than stillness and movement, which is more important than stillness and movement and chaos. All three are important as a method to be able to understand stillness and your relationship to your center. Because that's what we truly have to build, is that relationship to the center. The closer I can get to my center and stay on my center, then if anything happens externally, because I'm closer to my center, I can be quicker to adapt. If I'm far off my center and something happens, I have to first take precious life force and energy to find my center, and I lose time. And then I have to adapt. Now, we all get knocked off center. So when we get knocked off center, everybody gets knocked off center. Then it's how quickly can you recover center? So it's truly about the Tao, or the way of finding your center, protecting your center, training your center. So if you have a practice that allows you to develop your relationship with your center, and that same practice can then be a strategy of life, and then that same practice can be your way, then you're looking at a practice, a strategy, and a way of life, all based in finding your center and protecting it and sticking close to it. Because when you are in center of who you are, then you can be in the center of what's above you, what's beneath you, heaven and earth. And once that's all in alignment, now you can be in the center and connected to something higher and something greater than yourself. Because that's the ultimate thing. And it doesn't matter what your belief system is, but whatever you believe in that's higher than you, it's only when you're in your center, when you're in the still point, can you have a connection with something divine, or godlike, or whatever your words, the Tao, you want to define it as. Because that relationship is ultimate. That's the divine flow. And that's when you really know, hey, I'm good. And now you can be fearless.
That's beautiful. One thing, listening to you reference awareness quite a few times, it made me think of a struggle that I've had, where in today's world, with the powder kegs of chaos, I mean, you can open up your phone and there's a new outrage, there's a new thing to be scared of. But I found a sense of wanting to be aware of what's going on in the battlefield. And in the pursuit of wanting to be aware of what's happening in the external, I feel like I get consumed by it. And I've had a hard time, especially over the last little while, where I get consumed by wanting to be aware of what's going on, where I can totally feel like I get knocked off center by wanting to become aware of what is outside of my control. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And if I may be very frank and blunt, it happens to a lot of people, because when they're in that state, they don't actually have to feel how they're feeling.
Good point.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, when you're still and in your center, you feel all the things you don't want to feel. Right. And a lot of it's shitty, right? Because all the things you stuffed start to come up then. Mm-hmm. That's why people can't be present.
Right.
Right? People can't be present. They can't be here right now Because if they are here right now, they have to deal with all the things they don't want to deal with, that they've stuffed, all the emotions that they have stuffed, all the stories that they're holding on to. And that requires not only your life force, so we're talking about that's robbing you of your life force, but then when you become still, all those gooey, yucky, not so good emotions start to come up. And then we have to have a method to start to process them. Otherwise, you're like, oh, screw it, I'm out. I'm not doing this shit anymore. You'll find, the saboteur will find a reason to distract you. You'll find a story to convince yourself of it. And it's with everybody faces that. So when you do get to your center, with whatever practice you may choose, whether it's Tai Chi or yoga or Qigong or whatever, when you get to the center, you have to have now the steps and the method to do the work. Because when you're in the center, it's like, oh, okay, he's finally present. Let's bring up to the general in the head. Let's bring up to the emperor all the emotions he hasn't dealt with, so we can start to release it. So we can start to let it go. But all those things that went inside you, you will feel all the shitty feelings you felt when they went inside when it comes back out. So we'd rather not deal with it and continue in this virtual reality we created.
You've often said the way is in training. How can people train this? How can we do this work that's required?
Well, first of all, you have to find somebody who's a good teacher, who's done the work to help guide you through the way. Unfortunately, there's no hack. There's no quick fix. The first thing is that you have to get quiet. The second thing is, what I suggest, if people are doing certain practices, one thing they can do is to start journaling. You have to start journaling, and then something comes up. Like it's not like you say you get still and you get quiet, and then you have I don't know, a memory comes up when you were like 8 years old, sitting in a sandbox, and your mom and dad promised you, hey, you wait and play here, and I'll come back and get you this toy, and then they never do it. To a random one, that's one of my stories. My grandmother did that, and you're like, fuck, why is this coming up? Because you felt so sad as a child when that shit happened that you stuffed it and you closed your heart at that moment. And that's just one example. So then what you have to do is you have to write about it. How did you feel? When you feel a certain way and then emotions come up, a good question to ask yourself is, what is the youngest you feel feeling that way? Because that will allow you to get to the root of when that behavior started, when that stuffing of that emotion started. And then when you start to write about it, then you can start to be like, well, you know what? That wasn't my bad. That's their bad. That wasn't my bad. That was their lack of emotional intelligence. That, hey, you leave a kid there, sitting there, waiting, and you're telling him you're going to go get him his favorite toy, and then you don't get it. That has nothing to do with you. That has everything to do with them and their lack of their, like I said, emotional intelligence. And so then you can start to be like, oh, wait a sec. I'm not that 8-year-old kid. Yeah, that's not. I'm a grown-ass man. So why is that bothering me? So you start to release it. And then you start to forgive. Then you to release a lot of things that'll end up happening when you're releasing these things is that they're going to require forgiveness. Forgiveness is the greatest tool that we have. So when these emotions come up, they're going to be upsetting. So they're going to be based in betrayal, rejection, or abandonment. And when that happens, you have to be able to first, and maybe you created the problem, right? Maybe it was you also who did it, did something. Or somebody did something to you. It doesn't matter. So you have to be able to forgive the other person. You have to be able to forgive yourself. You have to be able to forgive God, the divine. And then what you have to be able to do, you have to forgive yourself, the other person, the situation, the divine. But the fifth step is the most important. You have to be able to extract the wisdom that you learned from that experience and then utilize that in your life. Then that traumatic event can be turned. See what I mean? You can start to let go of it. Now, this is a very simplistic thing that I'm saying. There's other processes that go of it, but generally, this is the path of it. And this is all internal Kung Fu training. Because if you want to be more aware, if you want to sense your opponent, you need your life force, you need your energy. But if you're holding on to stories, baggage, anger, frustration about events that happened years ago, to hold on to it, everything you hold on to requires energy and life force. So it's kind of like, imagine everything you haven't dealt with is like one of those floaty balls in a pool and you're holding it down. That takes life force. So imagine a pool full of like hundreds of balls that are just, you're constantly holding them down. So boom, you let one go. Boom, you let another one go. And as you go through the process, you keep going. Now you get more energy. Now that you get more energy, you're like, you become more aware. You're like, whoa, fuck, I'm such an asshole. I'm going to stop doing that. But I learned it from so-and-so. And so you start to see that, and that starts to free you up. Then that gives you more energy to deal with your fears. Like, oh, those fears aren't even mine. And it starts to free things up for you to get closer to who you are. And then the closer you are to who you are, now you start to step into what your real purpose is. We're not here to window shop. We're not here to just have an experience. We're here to grow. And so all of our unique challenges that we're going to get, they're divine design. They're here for us to grow. Otherwise, what would be the point? If the life was perfect, you wouldn't learn anything. And if you didn't learn anything, you wouldn't grow. So what would be the point of it? It would have 0.0 significance. There would have zero meaning.
Now, I feel like we're going to have to get together and do some filming in some way and share more of this with the world. But we're coming close to the end of the podcast, and we went through and covered a lot. So if there was some takeaways or messages that you could give to our listeners from everything we discussed, what would be the biggest takeaway for people?
I think one of the most important things is for us to study our experiences and our reactions to the experiences. Study what were your preferences. Study where did you learn those behaviors, and then start to question, am I that behavior or am I not? It's hard to define who you really are. So you guys have and people who are my students know that the central theme of the art of war is know yourself and know your enemy, and you're sure to succeed. Know yourself, don't know the enemy, it's 50-50. Don't know yourself, don't know the enemy, you're doomed to fail. Before the art of war to work, you have to first know yourself. But it's hard to know who you really are, but you can definitely figure out who you're not. So you can start there. We can all sit down and start there and figure that out. Because the more you figure out who you're not, you're just removing layers off of you. So it's not like, oh, who are you? That's a crazy question to answer. And that's going to change and transform. It's going to take some time for you to get to it. So you'll be like, oh man, a year later, you're somebody totally different. And that's one layer peeled. And then you keep peeling away layers. So it's hard to figure that out, but it's easy to figure out who you're not. It's easy to figure out. I'll give you a formula. It's simple. Before you make a decision, take a breath, step back, pause, and ask yourself, who's making this decision? Am I making this decision because I need someone's approval? Am I making this decision because I'm trying to control the outcome because I'm afraid that I may repeat something that's happened before? Am I making this decision because I need security? I can't let go of control, and I'm afraid of what's going to happen or the possibilities of uncertainty that are out there. That pause, and if you check yes to 1, 2, or 3 of those, it's not going to be a favorable decision. But if you can stop and be like, I'm about to say this to this person, why am I saying it? I'm saying this because I want them to like me. Or I'm saying, for example, I love you. say I love you to somebody, do you say I love you to somebody because you love them, or you say I love you to somebody because you want them to say I love you back? It's a very simple thing. But if you can learn to pause, take a breath, step back, detach from winning and losing, detach from future outcomes, detach from things that have happened in the past, and just observe it as a watcher and as an observer, what's happening right here, right now. And now you have a moment and an opportunity to choose a response. And in that moment, maybe what your natural reaction was is the right thing, but you chose it. That's empowering. I think that's really important. The second thing, from a pure martial arts perspective, the definition of mastery is the continuous transformation of the being. There's no such thing as master. There's no such thing as a destination. There's just continuous change and transformation. That's how nature works. That's how the world works. So become students of mastery, of transformation and change, and not students of winning or afraid or fear of losing, because that's where the ego comes into play. But if we can look at it from a place of transformation and change, then the results that are not so great, we get to invest in loss and learn from the loss and grow. And the things that we do well, like, oh, good, I did well. Well, it was a result of me staying in my center and making the right choices. You don't want to get too high and you don't want to get too low. Because then what ends up happening is you create expectations. And unmet expectations is the thief of joy, because then that gets you afraid. Now, there's a big difference between setting goals and having unmet expectations. See what I'm saying? It's good to set goals. And it's good to figure out how you're going to achieve those goals. Because the goals you set, you have to transform into the individual to achieve those goals. The goals you set, you have to have drawbacks and setbacks, because the drawbacks and setbacks are going to teach you lessons. Those lessons are going to lead you to growth. And in that growth, you will be able to get closer to whatever it is you want to achieve. And fear, I mean, the greatest fear that we all have is the fear of dying. Everybody does. But the reality of it is, as my teacher told me, and once he explained this to me, and I'll share with you, Dr. Johnson explained this to me. Once he explained this to me, I was like, wow, that's really very freeing. When you go to sleep at night, and you know, the world is filled with a lot of gratitude practices, which I love. Gratitude practice is amazing. And there's many different ones. But when you go to sleep at night, be grateful. Be grateful for the day you had. Be grateful for the losses you had. Be grateful for the wins, the experiences, the family, the loved ones. Be grateful and ask yourself 3 questions. What did I do well? What did I learn? And what am I going to do about it? When you wake up in the morning, that first breath you take, be grateful for that breath. Look over if your kids are there, your wife is there, your loved one is there, and be grateful for them being there. Because one day, for all of us, we don't know when that day is. We're going to go to sleep at night and we're not going to wake up. Or we're going to wake up one morning and we're not going to sleep. It's on our to-do list. So if we can understand and bring our mortality, memento mori, every man must die, into our existence at night and in the morning, we can truly live a life. Because death, just like fear teaches about courage, death teaches us about living, because it tells us that we don't have an infinite amount of time here. And we don't know when our ticket is up. If you know that, you bring that into your nightly prayers and in your morning practice, prayers, meditations, it's going to free you from the majority of things that drain your life force, that drain your mind, that rob you of joy, of happiness, of love, of kindness. And now you can be freer and you can fear less. And then you'll be of service to do more, because the divine only wants a sharp sword to be used. But we're the ones who dull it with all our bullshit.
Very nice.
Beautiful. Sifu, thank you so much for these nuggets of wisdom. I feel like we could go on for another couple hours. We have to get you back on the show again. And this was just powerful. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for being our mentor, and thank you for sharing this with our audience.
Much love, you guys. And to everybody listening, martial arts is the best.
Where could people find you if they wanted to reach out and to get more information from you?
They can go to Sifu Singh, SIFUSINGH.com, mindboxing.com, and my Instagram is at SIFUSINGH at Sifu Singh. So look out for, or go to the Budo brothers.
Yeah.
He's on there, yeah.
Absolutely. For those, if you want to learn from Sifu Singh himself, we produced an epic digital seminar that is a beautiful compilation of all things combat that we spent 10 days with you producing, extracting all of your life's work and putting it into digital form. So if you want to check that out, go to budobrothers.com, use promo code BB podcast for 20% off. If you've made it this far in the episode, we got to hook you up.
No, awesome. you guys are wonderful. And for those of you listening, you enjoyed that. We are in the works of, in 2023, of doing a follow-up digital seminar, which I'm working on already. And I'm really excited to share with everybody.
Definitely. And I think we need to do another battlefield strategies for business.
Yes, that would definitely be.
That's in 2023. That has to happen. Let's make that happen.
We got to make that happen. There's more kids that need martial arts training, and the Budo Youth Fund, which you guys started. That was one of the main things that attracted me to you guys, was that you were actually about giving back.
Damn right.
And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my teachers, my loved ones, and of course my wife, my kids, support from all of these people. We're so blessed that I'm so blessed to be in the position I'm in, and I think that the Battlefield Strategies for Business, or whatever seminar we do for the Budo Youth Fund, which sends children and pays their whole year of tuition, especially for kids who can't afford it, it gives them an opportunity to get a shot at life with the teachings that we've received that have changed our lives and made us better individuals. That once you win the battle with yourself, now you can go out and serve other people.
Beautiful.
That's the game.
All right. So everybody, thank you for listening, and we will catch you next week.
Adios.